we're trying to see Sanatan Dharma perennial philosophy from all perspectives. No one culture or religion has a monopoly, and everyone has their own path. In the West, we have a tradition called Druidry, which is very interesting, which involves poetry, the bardic traditions, and the word druid is connected to the word dharma. And we're fortunate, we have a druid bard, Jameson Hill, who lives in Istanbul in Turkey and works with the Sufi tradition, but he's trained as a sage from the Himalaya tradition. So really an example of the universalist perennial philosophy in action. Over to you, Jai.
Well, first of all, welcome. It's a great honor to be among such illustrious people. I just want to say what I'm not first. I'm not a great scholar. I don't usually talk about my spirituality. The best way I can communicate it is through poetry and story. I'm actually going to tell you a story I've never told a group of people. So that's what I'm basically going to talk about. So this is a poem first. It's called Duni, Fire Temple of the Goddess. And Thomas and myself and many others have done hundreds of fires across the United Kingdom and also Italy. In the last 30 years, I've done thousands of fires. And I was taught and initiated by a sage in Rajasthan in 1996. This is the poem. It's called Fire Temple of the Goddess. And this is for me what Sanatan Dharma embodies. Flames speak from the mouth of the earth, the mother soul of might and mirth. Wood smoulder, crackle and burn, wisdom smoke and kundalini stern. Fire energy rises from the ground and bakes the clay of the surround. Shamanic vision of celestial light dances across the scriptures in second sight. Earth magic spiraling high, swirl of wind, mindset fly, for in the smoke unity shines, and there is no division of the divine. Nectar sweet, the cup of Christ, Buddha's blessing and Woden's sight, Allah's purity and Jah's true call, Shiva, Krishna, Durga and all. Fire and flame and smoke and breath, the blessed shine of Agni's behest, transform worlds and born of light, the ego's death and sorry fright. Purple fire, orange glow, amber spark, totem crow, fly high bird of Valhalla into Christmas skies, take forth the sacraments of the goddess of night. For the years past and stories are spun, ancestral lines and battles won, scriptures spoken manifest, kingdoms of wonder, for 'tis poetry's power of fertile thunder. Thank the earth with grain and milk, and lay sweet down before shrines of silk. The thanksgiving of Duni fires, lift heavy hearts out of the mire. Down in the earth the fire burns, wisdom smoke, yogi and yogini learns. Namah Shivaya. Awen, Awen, Awen. Okay, that was the poetry bit. Right, now, next the story. I've never told anyone this story in 28. You're not a group. I've told individuals, but there's a very good reason I've not told this story, is because in my native UK, such a story would be probably mocked and laughed at, but I'm telling you because you are all experts in Sanatan Dharma, and Thomas also, of course, and a professor from the University of Oxford. I was brought up a Christian. I went to Sunday school. I was a bell ringer and a choir boy. I was a naughty choir boy, but nevertheless, I gave it my best. In my late teens, I started to get into Arthurian mysticism, and then the Hare Krishna movement, a brief dalliance, but it wasn't really for me. And then I got a book called Choose Your Own Mantra by Lalita, and there was two mantras that I started to chant. One was Om Mani Padme Hum, and the other one was Om Namah Shivaya. Jumped forward, and I met a man all dressed in black in a cafe in Malvern, my native town. And he was the son of what we call the grandfather of comedy in the United Kingdom, who's no longer alive. And he told me to come for a cup of tea at his house. He didn't mention Om Namah Shivaya. All he talked about was Tiruvanamalai and Ramana Maharshi and Advaita Vedanta. A few days later, I went to his door, and the mantra I'd been chanting for 2 weeks was written on Namah Shivaya. I entered into his house, and it was full of sculptures and flying goddesses. And he sat with me throughout that day, telling me about Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. He actually explained Jnana Yoga while I was doing his washing up, which I thought was ironic, considering I went to do Karma Yoga. I did study Karma Yoga. Jnana Yoga at the start, but I found Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga suited my mind better. But I read the Ribu Gita when I was very young. Anyway, in the evening, he took out a photo and he said, "This is not my tradition, but I think you should see this. This is a Baba called Harakam Babaji." He took the photo out and it was like lightning had struck my spine. And I said, "I don't know how I know this, but this is my teacher." And he was shocked. He said, "Well, I actually follow a different path, Advaita Vedanta." He said, "What you should do is to go home, make a little shrine, say Om Namah Shivaya, bow down, and then repeat the mantra and seek the source of the mantra." So that's what I did. I went back to my village, my parents' house. I was a young man, 21, and I did that very thing, and I made my pranam. And then I experienced the greatest bliss I'd ever, in all my life, ever experienced. And I thought I'll go out into the garden. It was a moonlit night. And at that time, I had the rather bad habit of smoking cigarettes. So in the moonlight, standing on the corner of the house, and I've never told a group this in 28 years, basically because it's beyond belief, I heard noises in the pampas grass. And they got louder and louder and louder. I thought, being a country boy, it's probably a fox or a badger. And the noises got louder and louder and louder. And then there was this thunderous energy, which now I know is a sort of Shakti energy. And a man stepped out of the pampas grass, that same Harakam Babaji. Well, at this point, you either think I'm mad or this is a great experience. What did I do? I screamed and I ran. I probably broke the 100-meter record back into my house. My parents said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Nothing." They said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I said, No. I got into my room, I shut all the curtains, I got under my duvet and I said, "Please, I don't know who you are, but leave me alone." A few days later, the same man who'd given me the picture said, "Oh, a man has just returned from Harakan Ashram. He'd like to meet you." And I said, "I'm not interested. I made a mistake. It's not for me." After some time, they got me to talk and tell them what had happened. 3 years later, I was in the Indian jungle and with two sages, Sri Trilok Singh, Shastriji, and Muniraji, and Sri Vishnu Datta Mishra Shastri from Rajasthan, Rajgarh Alwar. He's no longer alive, and Sri Trilok Singh is no longer alive. Between them, they taught me various things, but I was initiated into Havan. And Shastriji said, "Go back to your country, incorporate it with your druid, your shamanic path, and forget your ego and serve others." So that's what I did for the next almost 30 years. And did fire ceremonies with Thomas at Stonehenge, near Stonehenge, Glastonbury, North Wales, Italy. For me, Sanatan Dharma is the meeting of all rivers. I've experienced Christianity, the Vedas, Eastern mysticism, Taoism, whatever. For me, it's the same thing. In the bliss, the unbroken bliss of self, they're just perceptive filters. It's only when we get caught in bodily consciousness that there's a separation. Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, it's the same from the self. It's just one. And that's what I learned. That is my understanding of Sanatan Dharma. I'm not a great scholar. I'm not even a great poet, but that is what I learned. And that, in a nutshell, is Sanatan Dharma for me. I think now we, as a people, we need to try and weave the essence of that truth through education, through science, through everything, because the world is racked with wars, separation and hatred based on that separation, the ego dividing itself into different names, different labels. I don't even know what to call myself. I say I'm a Druid bard, but I feel like I'm a human being first and foremost. And that for me, Sanatan Dharma is that unity between all of us. Thank you very much. That's all really.
Jay, thank you so much for your blast of universality. And give our love to Istanbul. He lives in, is it Bektashi?
Besiktas, yes. By the way, I don't hang out with Sufis, but I would like to. You said I would. I know a little about Alevis.
They're all over the place in Istanbul. I can introduce you to some. I mean, they are the Islamic equivalent. They're the Islamic equivalent of the Perennial Philosophy.
But in 7 years, I've only done fire ceremony with one person, and President Erdogan's office is 10 minutes walk from my house, so I fly under the radar.
Yeah, I think this is a huge topic. I mean, politicians don't like universalism because it threatens their narrow political power bases, and sometimes they co-opt specific traditions to promote themselves. But there is, all I can reassure you is in Islam, there is a tremendous tradition of perennial philosophy, which is there universally. It was what inspired Akbar and the Mughal dynasty. It's what inspired the great Sufi traditions of the Chishti order and Afghanistan and so on. So I hope if we repeat this another time, we can have a Sufi speaker as well. So thank you, Jai, for your excellent work.
No. Yeah. Thank you all.
Okay, we're fortunate that our friend Pawan Agrawal, who was unable to speak previously, he had his slot, but is now able to join us and hopefully can now do his talk for us. Pawan Agrawal is the CEO of Prabhat Prakashan and has been studying the Sanatan Dharma for many years. So welcome, sir, and do share with us your thoughts.
Welcome, namaskar. Thank you, Thomas. First of all, I apologize for getting into the meeting room so late. And as you mentioned, I have never practiced a lot of things about Sanatan Dharma. But yes, I believe. And first of all, I would just like to mention one thing. Then Sanatan Dharma is not anything. It's a dharma. We should try to pronounce as dharma. It's all westernized that they have been calling Rama, Krishna, Sita. Actually, we have to correct the things simultaneously. So when we say about Sanatan Dharma, that is something dharma, as Neeraji was also telling, and as Gulab Kothari ji also mentioned about it. It's a seed. And Sanatan Dharma is the only dharma, which starts right from the inception of the universe, and it will continue. We don't know for how many thousand years the Sanatan Dharma has been, but as we practice Sanatan Dharma, as we go deeper, we find it more interesting. I'll just give you a very simple example. Everybody has the electricity at home, at office. That electricity is same, but we have a separate switches for AC, separate switch for fan, light, everything. So this is something like Sanatan Dharma is flowing everywhere in the universe. People who try to understand, they get the gist of it, and then they go deeper and deeper every day. And when we start doing this practice, we are feeling very relaxed. I see the people, who work 14 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours a day, but they don't feel fatigue because they're simultaneously practicing certain things from Sanatan Dharma. I mean, how you balance with your colleagues, how you balance in your family, how you balance with your wife, with your kids, that is being taught by Sanatan Dharma. And Sanatan Dharma is basically absolutely based on scientific reasonings. It's not a religion that we are talking about. How do we live the life? How we have to balance with our youngers? How we have to balance with our elders? It is basically sanskars, which starts from our home. And as Neeraji was mentioning, that women play a very vital role in this. So I agree 100% with her that yes, women do play a very vital role in our families. And now that the women are working almost in every field, and they are the actually preachers who guide the people working across the globe. I have seen people from various other religions who also practice Sanatan Dharma, and they believe it. Otherwise, I would just say, Neeraji was telling about people tree. She was telling about Tulsi. What is all this? These are all scientific reasons. Our saints were not just saints. They were actually a very, very thoroughly studied scientists, which are far, far better than anyone else. They knew how our society is going to transform, how the latest scientific things are going to come in the society. Today we are talking with each other because of the science. So this is the recent science. we have a very small bird, which is very ugly. It's crow. But there's a time in our year, according to Sanatan Dharma, we offer certain things to crow as well. Forget about any other animal or any other bird or tree. We have a respect for everything, be it a river, it's mountain, it's even oceans, even bhumi, everything. And this is the beauty of Sanatan Dharma. No one else can define this feeling of attachment with the universe. And when we say the feeling of attachment with the universe, that means with everything in totality. It's just not that we go to a temple, we worship there for half an hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, Shiva, Rama, or Hanuman. But it is the way of life which we have to live. So this is all. I don't have any expertise on the subject, but thank you to Dr. Siddharth that he invited me to join all of you who are much more senior to me and much more having command on the subject. So I'm very thankful that I got this opportunity to, and I'm really feeling honored that I have been invited into this. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your comments, Pawan Agrawal. And humility is always the key to any wisdom, isn't it? And so you may well be the most enlightened among us all.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for your remarks.
My pleasure.
You mentioned the environment, and you said how part of Sanatan Dharma is to honor the environment, all the elements, earth, air, fire, water, rocks, rivers, mountains. We're joined next by our speaker, Sri Kavita Ashok, and is going to speak specifically, I believe, about the environment. And so, Kavita, are you there?
Yeah. Hello.
Welcome. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, Kavita, go for it. Put your video on so we can see you. That would be great.
I'm so grateful to. Yeah. Can you not see me?
We can now. Yes. Welcome back. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So namaste, and I'm so humbled and so happy to be here with all you learned people. And thank you, Thomas and Siddharthi, for including me in this very, very eye-opening Sanatan Dharma discussion. And I work on environment and women's health in India. And I'm fortunate that my work gives me the opportunity to create awareness and love for nature and environment, and also to ask people to imbibe the traditional ways which have been introduced by Sanatan Dharma to us by thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yes,
can you hear me,
yes.
Thomas?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you. So there's a beautiful shlok which I want to bring in here, which talks Vanaspati, that is the forest, the plants, the leaves, the environment. And this is from the Garud Puran. And this says, Palash, Khadir, Chap, Margede people, Ardambar, Shammi, Tuva, Kush, Samikramat. So the Garud Puran also mentioned that these are all the plants which are used for Graha Shanti. That means planetary, positions and combustion. Whenever that happens in the Indian culture in Sanatan Dharma, there are a lot of havans and pujas that are done. So what I want to say is, because I read a little bit, Thomas, and so I've read the Shiv Puran and the Vishnu Puran. And what I've understood from there is that there is a significant importance of Vanaspati, forests, nature in all these Purans. It also, the Sanatan Dharma, according to me, also believes and emphasizes that there is a soul in everything, whether it is a plant, a tree, or an animal or a river or a mountain. And here, when we follow this dharma, I'm myself a follower of Sanatan Dharma, and I'm so privileged to be following it. I have good enough to be born here in India and have the opportunity to follow it in my family itself. That we have seen that, it also talks of taking care of the environment around you. Also speaking of medicine, that is Aushadhi. Aushadhi is very important. So we speak of Ayurveda in Sanatan Dharma, and it also tells us that everything is actually, nature is self-sufficient. Today we are running about for so many things, and it's a mad race out there. But basically, if you live a life of content, I think we have to understand that a life of content can be lived when we are, in harmony with nature and harmony with environment. So basically, medicine comes from Vanaspati. When we meditate, Sanatan Dharma also talks of meditation, yoga, all these practices. So when we meditate, when we are doing yoga, then also we are in the laps of nature. It happens most beautifully when you go to a retreat or a mountain. If you've noticed that if I go to a yoga class in a city, I live in New Delhi, which is so crowded, hustle, bustle, polluted city. So if I go into a yoga class here in a studio, it's not the same. Sit under beautiful meditation. So what is all these answers? What are we looking for? We're actually looking for what we have lost. I think we lost all these things somewhere in the race. I think what I would also like to mention is there are all food. I think I'd like to pick that point also, because hello.
Yes, do you have an earphone you can plug in? The microphone?
Can you hear me? Sanatan Dharma also talks about sattvic food. Yeah. I have my earphone. Okay. Yes, I have. Shall I take off the earphone and see once?
No, it's just that your voice keeps breaking up and your words of wisdom are being lost. So try and speak, clearly and slowly.
Yeah. So Sanatan Dharma also speaks of plants and also animals. In this dharma, we are also worshipping so many animals. So whenever we do an awareness program, we are also talking of how to keep in touch with the other parts of, I would call humanity as a whole. It's not just being human, it's also imbibing everything together. Everything has a soul. So I feel that, living with nature in harmony will give us the most peace of mind. And I work here in India on environmental issues, trying to bring awareness to people, trying to tell them to go back to their traditional ways of living, organic ways of living, the sattvic way of eating food, of consuming food, meditation, yoga, and a holistic life. So a holistic life is something which obviously will take you back to closer to nature. So Sanatan Dharma, I think, is serene and beautiful. And also, the energy is, everything is energy around us, whether it's a plant, it's a rock, or a hill or a mountain. Because in the mythology and in the Purans and Upanishads, we've all read that whether it's Shiva or whether it's Krishna, everyone was, the stories and the mythology is all based, even Mahabharata and Ramayana is all based. Somewhere there are forest and mountain, and also there was, we speak of Vanprasth in the lifespan of a person. So ultimately, I think some centuries ago, eons ago, told that there was a time in life when man had to get back close to nature. So I don't know if you could hear me or not, but I think Prakriti, that is nature, existed even before civilization, even before Sanskriti, and it will remain even after Sanskriti finishes. So Prakriti will always be there, and I think it's important to live in harmony with Prakriti, with nature. So I'd like to end here, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Thomas.
Right,
Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Kavita. Yes, and the question of nature, ecology, and so on is very, very important. And in fact, our last speaker today is K. Siddhartha, who's co-organized this with me from Brahma, and he is an earth scientist. He's now going to share his views about Sanatan Dharma and geology, earth science, climate change. These are huge problems. How can we apply, if there is an eternal wisdom, and let's just have it as a hypothesis, well, we've got to do something about the state of the planet. And look at what's happening in Texas. They've been hit by the effects of climate change. It doesn't mean the whole world warms up. It's going, some bits will become cooler, but climate change is a serious problem. So my heart goes out to the people of Texas and other regions where there's environmental catastrophes happening. So Dr. Siddhartha, please enlighten us with your overview now of how we can apply Sanatan Dharma to the Earth's problems. You'll have to unmute, sir. Let's just start.
Thank you, Professor Daffan, and the illustrious members in this case, Dr. Gavin, Jamson Hill, Neeraji, Matri Yogarchari, Asim ji, Pawan ji, Kavita ji, Satyen Raja, Tumbies Murli ji in this case, Kanu Mega, everyone in this case. And to answer the first question first, that Professor Daffan raised, the problem in Texas has been created because of what we call as Arctic vortex. Now, Arctic vortex is a vortex type of a circulation, that is this type of a circulation that takes place on the poles. Now, in the polar region, the entire troposphere and stratosphere becomes one, and it's going to be confined with a jet stream. The jet stream is responsible for confining this very cold pool of air. Now, there are two ways in which the jet stream can break. One is when the stratosphere goes on to get warmer, and the second is when there is an unnecessarily high amount of pressure over the Pacific Ocean. So this time, what has happened is over the Pacific, high pressure has intruded. It has moved inside like a tongue in the Arctic vortex region. So some of the air is spilled off. Second is the stratosphere is much more warmer than what it was. Why it was so, or why it is so, now this is left to a lot of questions because that has to be deliberated and so on. So what it did was the vortex that was moving on, that broke, that ruptured. It was this rupturing that allowed very cold icy winds to move south in United States. United States, it has been helped by two mountain ranges running parallel to the coast. One on the western side, that is the Rocky Mountains, and another on the eastern side, that is the Appalachian Mountain ranges. So it becomes easy for the winds to intrude inside. It's not easy in India because in India, the whole of the northern borders are guarded by the Himalayas, Hindu Kush, and Karakoram mountain ranges. So maybe we can go to ascribe climatic change to that portion. But then Sanatan says that the only thing constant in climate is change. Do whatever, climate will change. Whatever that you can go to do, climate has to change. Essentially, I'm going to begin by talking about that one of the thinkings in Sanatan has been disasters are going to be always for the purpose of cleaning the environment. And it doesn't go to consider disasters as disasters. It considers that disasters are phenomena. Any natural phenomena is a phenomena. We're going to make disaster out of it. And disasters, if they go to take place, that is a phenomena of a scale to which human beings are not adapted, that has an overweight purpose of cleaning the whole of the environment to start everything afresh. And one of the biggest poetry collections in India begins with it. It is in Hindi, but I'm going to translate it in English as well. Some of the people who can go to follow Hindi, they can understand it. हिमगिरी के उतुंग शिखर पर बैठ शिला की शीतल छां एक पुरुष भीगे नैनों से देख रहा था प्रलय प्रवाह, नीचे जल था ऊपर हिम था, एक तरल था एक सघन, एक तत्व की ही प्रधानता कहो उसे जड़ या चेतन. This has been taken from Kamani Jaishankar Prasad, written by Jaishankar Prasad. Now it basically goes on to say that there is a disaster that has taken place, and there is one person, lonely person sitting, everything has been destroyed, there is ice on the top, water beneath, and he is just lost in the environment, what to do next. And despite the fact that nature will go on to come to his rescue. That is one part, that is what Sanatan accepts it here. There's another aspect of nature that Sanatan accepts here. That is, nature knows best. That means come what may, whatever may be the situation. It's like you pick up an environment. It's like I'm going to take an analogy. You're going to pick up your watch, open it from behind, and going to poke a screwdriver into it. What will happen? The watch will stop functioning. Why? Because you don't have any right to poke any outside element into the watch. And if anyone has a right, it is the watchmaker who has to poke it inside. So as far as a watch is concerned, who knows it best? It's the watchmaker who knows it best. And as far as the environment is concerned, nature is concerned, who knows it best? That is, the nature knows best. No one knows it better than nature. But there is a third principle that Sanatan also goes on to follow in this case, as far as nature is concerned. That is that there is no such thing as free lunch. You cannot go on to get something out of nature when you are trying to destroy that. And the more you destroy, the more you will go on to get affected by that also. So it follows that part. The fourth is it says that up till a point, the bigger the better. Beyond that point, the bigger the worse. That means that if there are certain type of evolutionary trends that are taking place, all of these evolutionary trends will go on to allow you to become bigger, bigger, bigger. For example, horses used to be as big as the size of a dog. Now horses are almost 6.5 feet tall. Human beings used to be also smaller. Dinosaurs used to be of the size of a cat at some point of a time. They went on to roam the whole of the earth in the best possible manner. Human beings, if you can go to take a look at the micro-evolution of the human beings, you will understand that their shoulders are getting wider, they are becoming taller, and there are a lot of micro-evolutionary trends that are taking place. It's a possibility that in the future, that if this type of trends continue, the human beings will be something like a normal height of human being will be something like 7 feet tall. You will appreciate it that United States, a survey that has been carried out of its soldiers, during the Second World War, it was 5 feet 6 inches. And now, sometime back, it was 6 feet. And now, recently, it has been 6 feet 2 inches on an average. Take the case of tennis players. Pick up the case of Rod Laver. Then you're going to pick up the case of Jimmy Connors. Then you're going to pick up the case of McEnroe. And then thereafter, Rasko Tanner. And then now Djokovic and so on. And any one of them. You will going to find that gradually their height has shown an increase. All of those type of players in Olympics, everywhere. So human beings also going to show certain type of signs. So they will go on to grow bigger to a point. Beyond that, they cannot go on to grow. Then there's another principle that Sanatan talks about. That is, nature always goes on to correct itself. And that's going to be called in physics as a Cybernetics Principle. Now, cybernetics is a law in physics that says that if a ship deviates away from the course, that is anywhere, then its compass goes on to say that it has deviated and automatically it corrects it to its normal path. And that is how nature goes on to behave also. So the better part about Sanatan is, of course, talking about nature and correlated to nature, these are the laws that Sanatan goes on to follow, and they are very well manifested in a lot of aspects. But the biggest characteristic of Sanatan goes on to lie in the fact that it is spiritual. It's not a religion. It's not a religion. It's not a concept that there is a god, there is a goddess, and there was someone called as Ram. May have been a person, but he was more symbolic, and that is why he was called by the name of Maryada Purushottam Ram. That is someone who has all the good qualities that a human being must go on to possess. A person who has all the good qualities a human being must go on to possess. He should be like what we're going to be calling as Lord Ram. He may not be having it, but then that is how he has been symbolized. So one is spirituality, second is symbolism, and the third is flexibility in Sanatan. Now, in trying to make it different, how is it that religion and spirituality, both of them are different? Religion is a faith, it's a way of life. It cannot be just one, it can be many. It is an adaptation to your environment. Spirituality is not. Spirituality is what is one sees for themselves. Spirituality is going to be completely true to itself. Religion is not. Religion is going to be a set of dogmatic rules. Spirituality promotes human to reason about everything. Religion threatens and frightens you. Spirituality is governed by the ability to reason and actions, thinking, and gives inner peace. Religion asks a question. Spirituality questions everything in this case. Religion is human. Spirituality is divine. It's not human at all. It's not made by human beings. Religion talks of life after death, sin for wrong deeds and punishment or misdeeds. Spirituality is something is to find true independence. It's freedom, it's peace, it's solace in ourselves during this time, life itself. Religion fills us with the notion of glory, luxury, and paradise. Spirituality makes us live in glory of ourselves. It helps us understand ourselves better. Religion follows books and preachings. Spirituality seeks the sacred and purity of thinking in this case. Religion can cause divisions. Spirituality never divides at all. Spirituality, all in all, goes to combine. And what Nirari talked about, Vasudha Kutumbakam, the whole of the world is going to be ours. Religion is a belief system. Spirituality is experiential, and so is Sanatan. Religion aims at a quest for liberation. Religion sets you free completely. Religion has some followers. Spirituality is a walk in solitude. It's not being alone. And religion are groups. Spirituality focuses on individuals' progress in this case. And Sanatan is completely spiritual. It has not too much to do with religion in this case at all. At any point of a time, it had never to do anything. Sanatan believes that we are not human beings who go through spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings who go through human experience. Religion is a path. It's a method. It's a way of life. Spirituality is actually based on realization. It's a realization to what a purpose we have in life, the value of our existence, and that is the best part of Sanatan. Sanatan goes on to give you unmatched flexibility. It's like you believe in God, you are Sanatani. You don't believe it, you are still a Sanatani. You are Nastika or you are Astika. People who go on to worship, they are going to be Murti Puja. People who don't worship, they are Nirgun Brahmins. No issues at all in this case. Sanatani also don't go, who want to criticize any religion, you criticize it, keep on criticizing it. So you have Nyaya, you have Tark and whatnot. They are true Hindus, they are true Hindu schools, but then Sanatanis are those who accept beliefs as it is. They don't go on to criticize anyone. They're just going to keep on improving upon themselves. Sanatanis always want to start their journey by reading Upanishads, and that is another part of it. Sanatanis also want to start journey by reading their Puranas as well, right? It's going to be like even if someone doesn't want to like the idea of bhakti, they can be. You don't have to be bhakt at all. They can be karma yogi. If someone wants to enjoy it, they can enjoy following Charvak philosophy. That is, borrow something, cheat someone, do it anything, but live a luxurious life. Sanatan also goes to say that if you don't want to do it, you are always going to be free in this case. Sanatanis are also those who don't have time to celebrate their festival. There are multiple festivals, but Sanatanis are also who can go to make every day a festival as well. And that is the best part of it. If you're a working person, you are a Sanatani. If you don't want to work, you are still a Sanatani. And this is the exact essence of Sanatan, all inclusive in this sense. The third part about Sanatan being best is going to be symbolism. Sanatan goes on to differentiate it, the only belief, and it's not a religion, It's the only belief that differentiates between God, it differentiates between Ishwar, it differentiates between Dev, it differentiates between Devata. There are 4 different aspects here. It talks about the concept of Ram. It doesn't want to talk about Ram the person. It talks about the concept of Ram Raj. And Ram Raj was essentially a democratic form. Essentially, the way that you can go to govern it, the way that you want to govern the entire of the country, entire of a nation. How is it that you can go to administer it? Sanatan talks about Aranya. And if you can imagine, why is it that people must go to forest, Aranya? This is because in Aranya or in forest, everything is going to be unorganized. Everything is there. There is no karuna. There is no empathy in that region. There is no knowledge. When you go to come to nature, then there is so much amount of knowledge. And when it is going to be, when you go on to come back from Aranya, that is the forest, then you are completely enlightened. That was the basic reason that someone must go on to a Aranya. Aranya means forest. Forest means jungle. Jungle means complete chaos. Jungle means there are animals. Animals means who do not going to follow any rule, any law in this case. It is not like Nagar. It's not like a city where everything is going to be arranged in this manner. In Sanatan, there is a concept of goddesses, so many of them, 300. So a tree is also God. Why exactly that tree is God? Because only then you will go on to understand the significance. This is what has been talked about by Pawanji, by Neeraji. This is what I talked about by Kavitaji as well, all of them. And you have been dwelling upon so much amount of a life in this case. It's Sanatan that goes on to talk about the concept of Ravan also. And Ravan was again not a person. He was a concept. Ravan means Dashanan. That means he had 10 heads. 10 heads means not physically, the way that you go to see it. It was like he can go, he had the power to think like 10 different people. He had the knowledge of 10 different people in this case. Ravan meant he was someone who was very, very powerful, but he was not powerful enough not to win over himself. And if you're not able to win over yourself, you are bound to face extinction. Ravan means something explicit, being very truthful, being very pure, nothing camouflaged at all. That was Ravan. Ravan means he was exceptional, extraordinary, unique, and unparalleled. And that is also what Sanatan talks about. Ravan exists only because Ravan exists. Otherwise, there was no existence of Ravan at all. The only thing, it was not Ram who killed Ravan, it was Ravan who himself killed. And it was I of Ravan who killed himself. If you go to follow I, if you are arrogant, and arrogance is your jewelry, there is no power on the earth that can go on to save you. Nothing at all. And that is the beauty of Sanatan. Sanatan is nature. Sanatan is Prakriti. Sanatan is Sanskriti. Sanatan is sincerity. Sanatan is culture. Sanatan is also part of your symbolism. Sanatan is also spiritual. Sanatan is so flexible. And it is not at all religion. It is not that you have to worship. Sanatan doesn't go to say that you have to worship. Otherwise, you can go to worship your parents, worship your scholars, worship all the people present here are worthy of being worshipped. That's all from my side.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Siddhartha, for your moving talk. And all this is being recorded. You'll be able to re-watch and listen and show your students and so on. So the time has come. I'm going to say a few concluding remarks here and sum up what we've learned so far, hopefully. And then for those that want to stay on and have a discussion and some questions, you know, feel free. If you've got other appointments, other calls, then, you know, we'll finish in 5 or so minutes. But if you want to stay on and linger and chat, we can do that. I just want to comment a couple of things. It's come up quite a few times, you know, the difficulty about the word religion. That's something that's come up. Now, I was trained as a linguistic philosopher, and at Oxford University, we have a school of intellectual analysis of language. If we're going to really be accurate, this is what Gavin was trying to do, looking at the origin of the word Sanatan Dharma, and the same with Perennial Philosophy, which I tried to do. I just want to make a comment about the word religion, because a lot of people don't understand its root and its origin. And therefore, there's a sort of resistance to it. Oh, I don't like religion. Spirituality is fine, but not religion. This is all caused by a misunderstanding. okay, a total linguistic confusion. And as Wittgenstein said, we have to clear up these confusions. The word religion is an old Latin term that meant it was never a noun. It's an adverb. It's an action. To act religiously meant you did whatever it was with perfect dedication and consummate focus. So if you're planting a garden religiously, you plant it beautifully. You do it in rows. You plant in the right sequence. You plant with the moon. You know, the Latins were great gardeners. If you're a footballer and you're playing religiously, you will play with great skill, professionalism. You will score goals. And if you're a seer or a fire ceremony person or a druid, you will do your spells with perfection. You will do them with religious precision so that your words will carry effects. You will read your Atharva Veda and do your chants and spells to the absolute perfection. So to act religiously means to act with your full potential as a human being. Now that's very important. I think we should abolish the noun religion, but reclaim the word as an adverb. And we should all act as much as we can religiously, whatever our dharma, whether we're an engineer, an architect, a teacher, a philosopher, whatever. Okay, so this, by the way, goes back to Numa Pompilius, who founded the religious rituals of Rome way, you know, in the time of ancient Rome. And Numa Pompilius was a great pagan sage who said we have to act religiously. And he brought in ceremonies to propitiate and worship all the gods and goddesses with particular times, with particular rituals. And as they do exactly in Hindu temples all over the world and in other religions. So I think that's the first word I want to clear up, the meaning. I think we can act religiously from the perspective of universalism. The second point I want to clear up is philosophy, because, you know, some people have said, no, philosophy, that's just sort of intellectual stuff, that's boring. It's what we want is a way of life. We don't want just to do ideas, we want to apply it. Well, again, there's a misunderstanding about what philosophy actually means, because unfortunately it's been captured by philosophers. When I was a young man, I went to university in Bristol to study philosophy, and I was horrified at what these so-called philosophers were doing. They'd captured this thing and turned it into a sort of, I don't know, a polite game where you publish learned papers that only colleagues can read. Ordinary people can't read them. So I actually resigned in protest and walked to Stonehenge, and then went to Canada for 4 years and studied privately, because I'm trying to reclaim philosophy for all of us. In the original meaning of the word, it meant, it was coined by Pythagoras, who was a peripatetic seeker of wisdom. He was half Phoenician, half Greek, and he traveled to Babylon, to Egypt, to Delphi, all over Greece. He ended up teaching in Italy, and he coined the word philosophy to sum up exactly what we're talking about. You know, this perennial philosophy, this universal wisdom. He'd found it in Babylon, he'd found it in Egypt, he'd found it in Phoenicia, he'd found it in all the temples and among the sages he traveled and met. It's even said he went to India. There's some possibility he certainly got to Babylon, which at that time was the Persian Empire. It was in touch with India. So he may well have he certainly met Hindu and Jain sages. And so philosophy was for him the love of wisdom. Nobody can claim to be wise, ultimately. All of us are human, fallible. We have, you know, we get sleepy, we have bad dreams or whatever. You know, nobody is fully enlightened and wise. So what we have to do is love wisdom. That's the purpose of that. And so the third word is spirituality, which we've all agreed. Advaita Vedanta is about a spiritual perspective. And I want to just end with an insight about this word spirituality. It comes from the word for breath, and I'm very grateful to my Trey for sharing with us the song of the breath, the Soham. And I'm speaking to you using breath, right? All words come from breath. And all ideas of the deity, I'm going to argue, come from spirit. And I'm going to tell you, finish with a tiny little story about the wind. If you think of gods and goddesses as local winds that are happening in your grove or your garden, that's what the Japanese Shintoists call the kami. That's your local spirit. And they're real. You know, in the Celtic world, we call them the fairy kingdom. There are these elves or fairies. They're divine. Then there are winds that come regularly around certain routes. In Calgary, we have the Chinook that comes every winter. It brings warm air regularly, every few weeks. In France, we have the Mistral, which in the south. Every country has routes of winds. Now, I call those the regional gods. Those are like Yahweh, the God of that region, of the people of Israel. That's like Luch, the Celtic god of Europe, or Ceridwen, or Indra, or all the different gods and goddesses of India. Sarasvati originally was the name of a river goddess. She had a place, a location. So these deity names, if we're going to look at it ecologically, they're like the spiritual energy assembled in a particular eco-region. Now, Jung, who's one of the scientists who studied the collective psyche, said that the collective unconscious has these archetypes. We could think of those as regional deity turbulences in the troposphere, as we were taught by Dr. Siddhartha. I would say there's a troposphere of the mind. There's a collective unconscious, which is all around the planet, which takes regional form, be it Shintoism or, you know, the worship of Indra or Buddha or whatever, or Christ, the Trinity. But when you get up to the next level, you get to the place of universality. And I would say that if you were a great mathematician and you could count up the number of winds on the planet at this very moment, it would be in the millions, probably billions, if not trillions of little winds going on in every field, forest, garden, and street. Add that sum total, that is the absolute deity. That's the God or absolute consciousness that Advaita Vedanta or perennial philosophy is trying to understand. And I'm writing a book about religious mathematics to try and work this out. How can we calculate the immensity of that totality of all the winds, which would be the collective superconsciousness that Ken Wilber and Assagioli talk about? That's when we become as a planet collectively enlightened. And that's when Avalokiteshvara, the great Buddha of compassion, you know, wakes up and we can end the ignorance and suffering on this planet. And then, just to finish, all those winds, all those deities of collective unconscious spirituality are taking place within absolute space, as Newton taught us. There's an emptiness, a shunya, within which all the winds are going, right? And that is the absolute void nature that Buddha reached. That's the place of akash or absolute shunya. Enlightenment is when you see that absolute void nature, the pristine shunya, and then, yeah, okay, the winds are happening. As Buddha said, yes, there are gods, you know, but you don't get hung up on them, and you certainly don't start attacking other people because they have different winds in their country, because we're all from that one absolute Buddha nature, or that Tao. The Chinese call it the Tao, the absolute, which is flowing, it's permitting. And, you know, it's very interesting. What is space made of? Is it made of consciousness? I think so. Is it divine consciousness? Is it collective consciousness? Yes, I think so. That's the cutting edge of quantum physics, which modern science is now revealing as well. So like Ouroboros, the science of the West and the spirituality of the East are now joining a circle. And, you know, it's been beautiful to host you all. You're all in your own spheres and realms, masters and mistresses of this divine wisdom. And so let us carry on and pursue this, the search. Now, those are my concluding remarks. Anyone that wants to stay and raise questions and ask and comment on anyone's, you know, stuff, feel free. But if you've got to dash off, you've got appointments, that's fine.
Can you hear me?
Nira, you have a question.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You raised a very interesting question about the wind gods in local areas. You know, in India, we have this very interesting concept of Gram Devta, Sthan Devta, and we of course say we say Devta to everybody, the wind, the rain, etc. That you know already. We have Indra and Varun and all. But even today, in every small village, there is something called the Gram Devta. And you know what has happened in places like Chennai, that is South India. The city, you know, all the grams, the small villages actually have become small localities, but they have not given up this tradition of a locality god.
Right.
So they do believe that there is an energy, like, I mean, we all know that it's all energy, you know, we are all energy. So this energy of every area is actually worshipped, that we remain happy and prosperous, and everybody actually goes and does a puja there, you know. Even educated people, when I'm saying educated in the sense that people who have got different types of education, but they still believe in that spirit of the local area, the spirit of the wind and the environment and the everything. So it's a very, very nice concept that I'm glad you're writing a book on all these aspects. So I just thought, let me share with you. It's still a living tradition in India. We have this temple called the Kampil Vasani temple. We have it in our area.
It's the same in Japan with the Shinto tradition.
Yes.
Each village has its own deity, its own kami.
Yes.
And they have a temple and they revere it, you know. And it's actually the same in England. It's just that it's not like official. Each little village in England has its own little church, and they revere the local mounds and they respect the ancestral deities. They just don't, you know, they haven't been given permission to actually articulate the theology behind that. I'm trying to give them permission because we have to revere the local as well as the universal. It's not an either or, it's both and. Yeah. Any other points? Any other questions? Gavin, you had some things to say about explaining. Maybe you wanted to talk about colonialism and so on. You had some other critiques of perennial philosophy. Do you want to just raise that or some other points?
Yeah, I don't think I can't think of to sharpen that up at the moment, but I think that the general point, we all need to be more universalistic, and human beings have to get together to face the problems that we face in order to overcome them. And if that's impelled by a spiritual impulse, I think that's, I think it is, then it's good to be able to articulate and express that.
Yeah. And that's what universities are for. The whole idea of a university is a place to study universal knowledge, isn't it?
Indeed.
And so we have to fight a good fight inside academia to keep open this dialogue about universalism. It's the very lifeblood of university. I was reading yesterday mathematics by a man called Alain Delille. He was a French scholar and academic who studied with Abelard, who founded the University of Paris. He was called a Doctor Universalis, like the universal doctor. What a great name, right? And he wrote books about everything: language, philosophy, theology, religion, but also nature, science. And that's what the true scholars should be doing here in the West, as they have never stopped doing in the East. So any final points? Jay, do you have a final poem for us before we go? Have you got another poem?
I have yeah, go on then. Let me just talk for a minute. Just let me find it. It's the one I sent you actually for the for our order.
Yes.
What did I do? Let me if I can find it. I mean, I really enjoyed everything today. It was fantastic. But I just think it's great to have this kind of dialogue because it's really, really important. I mean, like I say, I hardly ever talk about spirituality to anyone. I keep it very much to myself. So, yeah, it was a great experience. I'm just trying to find it, Thomas. Do you want to talk a bit more while I find it?
Sure. I would love Jed to tell us the story of how he discovered the Brahma temple. There is a strange paradox. In India, there's no temples to Brahma. There are millions of temples to all the other gods, but Brahma has very few temples. And he has a wonderful story about discovering the Brahma temple. Do you remember, with the dogs?
Oh, yeah, okay. That's yeah. Okay, so in 2010, I went to Pushkar to see the great sacred lake of Pushkar. And I arrived there at night time. I'd been in Jaipur. And I got to the lake and it wasn't there.
Why is the lake of Pushkar so important?
Well, it's a revered sacred lake surrounded by mandirs. And I'd read so much about it, but they drained the lake for the first time in about a century. So it was just puddles. And I thought, oh my God, there's no lake. I've come here. What are the chances of that? So I started thinking and I thought, right, I'm going to go around the little market and put together a Havan fire kit. And the locals helped me. And then under cover of darkness before dawn, I walked to the middle of Brahma's holy lake and did a Havan. And as I was sitting there offering, an angry pack of wild dogs came towards me. And I was alone and it was before sunrise. And I thought, oh no, have I done something wrong? And what should I do? So as I was swahoing, my intuition was to throw them some prasad. So I did. And at that point, all the dogs sat down and were really gentle and just watched me. So I carried on doing the fire ceremony. And then as the sun rose, I was surrounded by a swarm of mosquitoes. And I thought, oh my God, malaria. So I carried on doing the puja and I just got lots of incense and wafted around. They went. And when I'd finished, a man walked from the edge of the lake, bearing in mind there's no water in the lake, just puddles. And he said, hello. He said, I have a temple. What is your name? And I said, well, my name's Jameson, but my Guruji gave me the name Jai Shankar. He said, my name is Krishna, you are Shankar, but I am Shankar, you are Krishna, we are one, come, drink tea. And he took me to his temple, and just next to his temple was a little mandir to Sri Harakam Babaji, who was the teacher of my two teachers, Sri Trilok Singh and Sri Vishnadatta Mishra. I found the poem.
Okay, we'll end with this, Jai. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And we have the Bard of Britain currently living in Istanbul.
Northern. Okay, this is called The Scrolls of the Inner Sanctum of Peace, the Awakening Call. The snow, fine and furious, cascaded through the oriental sky. It wisped downwards, seeking the earth, and the elementals danced in frost-like joy. For the fire of spring was murmuring beneath the dark and fecund soil, and the wind whipped up a frenzy of summer passion that was waiting to manifest in the holodeck of the world. The Tibetan monks walked in procession, deep belly-led ohms that vibrated in the walls of the monastery. The chants went up and out across the mountainous landscape. They plodded along in blissful mirth and walked in and out of the world into the ether realms of the higher planes. Across the seas in North America, a majestic-looking native with face paint with white and primordial lines and feathers arched like a regal peacock, danced on the earth, muttering guttural and sacred songs of peace. The earth responded with a myriad of celestial spirits zooming around in circles and sparkling in the nighttime skies of the prairie with an otherworldly display of earth magic. Deep down south in the bush, an Australian Aboriginal entered into dreamland, and there in the sparse and desert plains, the elders of the Dreamtime stepped forth, with incantations of breathtaking resolve, cast a spell of peace across the four corners of Gaia. The age of awakening was coming. Om Namah Shivaya. Owen, Owen, Owen.
Om Namah Shivaya. Yeah, thank you again. Blessings to all. And it's been an honor to host you all. And we'll meet again. Shalom.